everything you see exists together in a delicate balance.
Hi. What's your name?
Hello and thanks for joining us for this week's Movie Madness. I'm joined by our film critic Lisa Nesselson. Hello, Lisa.
Hello, Eve.
Now, we're starting with the live-action reimagining of the 1994 animated film The Lion King with voices by Donald Glover and Beyoncé. It's out in France this week. Most people loved the original film about the lion cub Simba taking his place in the circle of life. But I understand, Lisa, you have some doubts about it.
I'll get to that in a minute. But first, it must be said that the quality of the animation in 1994 was superb. I was even more dazzled by the re-release when they went back and somehow turned it into 3D animation. I haven't seen it, but I hear the hyper-realistic technical accomplishments of this new iteration are dazzling.
OK, well, let's take a look at the film as well as hear from the director, Jon Favreau, and Elton John, who did some of the music, who are at the London premiere.
It's exciting to see what you can do with new tools, and it seemed like a wonderful opportunity to bring this story to a new generation using this technology to make it appear as though it were live action, even though every shot is completely generated by computers and all the performances are created by artists.
I'm just very glad that I was involved in the first one, which is from 1993. I was first involved in it, and it's been a part of my life ever since with the theatrical productions around the world. I must have seen it about 40 times by now. Yeah.
Now, Lisa, you say you don't like the message in this film. What's so ominous about it?
Well, I stumbled on this unexpectedly about 15 years ago when I was teaching a film class to American students in Paris from a university in Texas. I made an offhanded remark about The Lion King, and I seriously thought I would get lynched. I realized that my students, from watching the movie over and over again on videocassette, felt so completely devoted to it that it was as if I had insulted the god they worship. And amazingly, a friend of mine who teaches a film course in one of the most prestigious French universities ran into a very similar reaction. So, on both sides of the Atlantic, people who were young in the 1990s are unshakably devoted to The Lion King. And while I don't go looking for themes in animated films, the ultimate message of The Lion King is that there are born leaders and the populace just has to wait around until they're ready to take their rightful place and their preordained role, and all will be well. And I'm not alone on this. As A.O. Scott of the New York Times put it on July 11th, quote, "Of all the second Golden Age Disney animated features, the original Lion King is the most Shakespearean, as well as being the most ideologically coherent Hollywood defense of monarchy until Black Panther." Of course, the film also celebrates friendship and other excellent ideals.
Well, not that long ago, the name Luc Besson was synonymous with success on a planetary scale. 35 years after the self-taught director burst onto the scene with his sci-fi debut, Le Dernier Combat, starring Jean Reno in a post-apocalyptic landscape, Besson is facing accusations of sexual misconduct and struggling to keep his indebted production and distribution company Europacor afloat. His most recent film as writer-director Anna was released in the US and the UK with minimal fanfare. It was out in France this week. What do you make of it, Lisa?
Well, Anna's been completed for a while, but its release was delayed while higher-ups tried to decide how to handle post-Me Too allegations, including one of rape just last year, which has been dismissed by a Paris court. Two surprises for me concerning Anna. I saw it the evening it came out. The theater was only half full, and not that long ago, there would have been lines around the block. I was surprised to see that the majority of people in the audience were around my age. There were very few young people, and my second surprise is that it's not a bad movie. Well, it is, but it's not a dud, which is the only word you can use to describe Besson's misfire Valerian, billed as the costliest French movie ever made. Anna is spectacularly implausible, but it's entertaining and completely watchable. It's not boring. For this style of double and triple cross-fueled violent femme fatale adventure, spanning several countries, countless morphing allegiances, I'd say Atomic Blonde starring Charlize Theron or Red Sparrow starring starring Jennifer Lawrence, are way better. But Anna is fun, mostly thanks to Helen Mirren as a heartless KGB battle axe, Olga. Anna is a poor young Russian woman who gets scouted in Moscow to model with an agency in Paris. But maybe that's just a cover for her mission for Mother Russia.
Okay, well, let's hear from Luc Besson about how this film was a nice change for him.
I had just finished filming Valérian, where there were 3,700 special effects shots. And in this film, there are no special effects. It's just the actors. I really enjoyed returning to this kind of filmmaking and the directing of actors in this way.
She's highly intelligent.
Takes more than intelligence to act intelligently. Dostoevsky.
Like a captive cast to the bottom of a deep, dry well. I know not who I am, not what awaits me. Yes, it's clear to me that in this cruel and obstinate struggle with Satan, I'm fated to emerge victorious, and mind and matter shall fuse in perfect harmony, and the reign of universal will shall begin.
How did you know that?
I work for KGB, baby.
She has not been.
I'll take her.
So, Lisa, remind us of Luc Besson's place in French and international cinema.
Well, I've never been much of a fan of Besson's films, but there is no denying the generational impact they've had. Le Grand Bleu, The Big Blue in 1988 was a massive hit. In fact, 1 out of every 6 people in France saw it in a theater, and it played for over a year at the biggest cinema in Paris. The soundtrack album was in every French home. The Fifth Element, which was based on a script he wrote as a kid and seemed like it, well, that was another smash. La Femme Nikita and The Messenger, the story of Joan of Arc, starred his then-wives, Anne Pariot and Mila Jovovich. He gave Natalie Portman her start in Léon, The Professional. His École de la Cité, full disclosure, my husband taught there the first year, and some of his students have already gone on to make feature films, was a wonderful tuition-free initiative to teach filmmaking skills to ambitious young people who, like the young Besson, have no connections with showbiz and may be from disadvantaged backgrounds. But when the accusations of rape started surfacing, the school lost the corporate sponsors it needed to stay afloat, and it closed last year, leaving a batch of students stranded halfway through the curriculum. I think that's a crying shame. There are some more, but so far none of the charges against Besson have stuck.
Okay, so let's move on. A French director, technically Swiss actually, whose name is recognised the world over, is Jean-Luc Godard. Now this summer, English-speaking visitors to Paris will have an extraordinary opportunity to experience the new wave icon's oeuvre. Tell us more.
Well, the ranks of the French New Wave in front of and behind the camera get a little thinner all the time, but Godard is still with us, and this is a possibly unique opportunity starting July 24th at the Reflet Medici Cinema to see restored prints of 21 Godard films, each with English subtitles. His creativity was matched only by his chutzpah, and he's still working in video, doing what most people would call mashups of found footage at age 88 and a half. Before he got bogged down in political subtext, he toyed with visual storytelling, melding action, romance, talk, and the sheer joy of camera equipment liberated from a studio setting. Now, it's kind of fun to think that in the summer of 2019, it will be possible to walk past the cinema on Rue Champollion, where François Truffaut and Claude Chabrol and Jacques Rivette watched movies and talked about them around the clock, in order to go see Godard films in a cinema that Godard once sat in himself. Now, I remember attending a press conference with Godard maybe 24 years ago in Cannes, where he said that there's no odder experience than having a stranger tell you what you meant by something in one of your movies and try to tell him, well, no, actually, that's not what I meant, and have them retort, well, I happen to have a PhD in film studies. And one of the highlights of Cannes in 2018 was Godard's press conference via iPhone. Journalists from all over the world lined up to talk to a phone being held aloft, while Godard replied from his home in Switzerland, and people from China to Brazil said, Monsieur Godard, I learned French so I could understand your movies. Godard was tickled pink, of course, this summer, thanks to English subtitles. You don't even have to understand French. I can't promise you'll understand Godard, but it's always worthwhile to try.
Okay, well, re-released in France this week is a modern classic by the elusive American director Terrence Mallick. Tell us about why we should seek out Days of Heaven from 1978.
Because it's gorgeous, not in a superficial, oh, I love the scenery sort of way, but in an every frame is imbued imbued with an inner glow beauty. Terrence Malick's first two films, Badlands and this one, Days of Heaven, affected me the way I'm told heroin works. I wanted more and kept trying to get that cinematic high again, but it's never been the same as that pure rush of movie-going pleasure, though Mallick has gone on making movies every so often for over 40 years. He won the Palme d'Or in Cannes for his Tree of Life, and he had a fact-based film about a German conscientious objector in competition this year. Now, Days of Heaven conceals the romance between Brooke Adams and Richard Gere's characters by having them pretend to be brother and sister. They're not married. When they're hired to work on the land owned by brooding and ill Sam Shepard, he falls for her, not realizing she's spoken for. The tale is narrated in charmingly direct language by Linda Manns, who was then a girl. It was shot with unbeatable deference to the beauty of the landscape and the nuances of light in settings in the turn of the previous century by Cuban cinematographer Nestor Almendros, who won the Oscar. If you've never seen it, this is the very definition of a film made for the big screen.
Okay, I'm guessing you like it just a little bit, Lisa. Thank you very much. Now we're going to leave you with Days of Heaven. Remember our website, we're also on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. There's more news coming up on France 24 after this.